Modern Star Wars is worse than it's ever been, and Disney is exactly why. Not because they don't hire good talent, Disney just cannot afford to make it good. At least, not the way it used to be made. And by the time I'm done explaining why, I guarantee you, some of you are going to be furious with me, but in completely opposite directions. Let's go back to 1977. A man named George wanders into a random pitch meeting with a script about laser sword wizards and space cowboys. By most accounts, nobody in that room really gets it. The cast thinks it's gonna flop. Crew members think it's entirely a joke. And Fox, the studio who's actually funding it, genuinely doesn't think it's gonna do much either. It's well known at this point across the industry that nobody expected Star Wars to be a big deal. Honestly, they didn't even care about the merchandising rights, which is the only reason they let George keep them in the first place. Nobody at the studio thought a few toys and lunchboxes were worth fighting over, because as far as anybody in that building was concerned, this was just a weird little dress-up space experiment, nothing more. And here's the number that actually puts that into perspective. The whole movie got made for $11 million. Adjusted for inflation, that's somewhere around $60, maybe $65 million in today's money. And that's it. That's the entire budget for what became one of the biggest entertainment franchises humanity has ever produced. For comparison, a single modern Star Wars film routinely runs 2, 3, maybe even 4 times that. Rise of Skywalker alone was reportedly north of $200 million. Fox wasn't betting the company on this. They were taking a flyer on a weird movie from a guy who wanted to put cowboys in space for less money than it costs to make one mediocre blockbuster today. And think about what that actually means. Nobody's job was riding on this movie hitting a number. There was no toy division waiting on quarterly projections. Nobody had to explain to a board why the ending tested badly with a focus group. It was just a guy making something he personally wanted to make, with a studio that mostly left him alone because they really didn't think it mattered. And to be clear, I'm not romanticizing the good old days here. I'm saying low stakes create room for weird choices, bold choices. And yeah, before anybody brings it up in the comments, Lucas got that same total creative freedom again on the prequels. No committee, no notes, and honestly, you can even go argue amongst yourselves about how that one turned out.
That old man's mad.
They're the kind of choices that either completely flop or completely redefine an entire genre. And you never know which one you're going to get until it actually releases. High stakes do not create that room. High stakes create the opposite. Now, fast forward a few decades. That weird little dress-up space experiment isn't weird or little anymore. It's a $1 trillion machine with a theme park, a toy aisle, and an army of executives protecting every single inch of it. And here's the fun part. You don't even have to read between the lines to see what protecting it actually looks like, because the executives in charge say the quiet part out loud, on the record, in actual interviews. Solo, a Star Wars story. Phil Lord and Chris Miller are directing it. You know, the guys behind some small films that you know. The Lego Movie, 21 Jump Street, nothing too fancy. And they're most of the way through production. Weeks left on the shooting schedule, and Kathleen Kennedy fires them. Mid-production, mind you. And then brings in Ron Howard to finish it, who ends up reshooting somewhere around 70% of the entire movie. And why did they get fired? Well, Kennedy flat out said it in interviews afterwards. Lord and Miller came from an animation and sketch comedy background, and they like to improvise. Let scenes breathe. Experiment on set. And her actual quote, there's room for that. Quote, but it has to be inside of a highly structured process, or you can't get the work done, and you can't move the armies of people to anticipate and have things ready. Armies of people. That's the actual phrase the president of Lucasfilm used to explain why creative experimentation got shut down mid-shoot. Lord and Miller were plenty good at their jobs. The problem was scale. A production this size, this expensive, with this many people's paychecks depending on the schedule holding, cannot afford a director who wants to try 5, 6, 7 takes of the same joke to see what's funniest. That's the luxury of smaller, lower stake production. Solo didn't have that luxury. So the improvisers got replaced with the guy who made Apollo 11. And here's the kicker. Even after all of that reshooting, all of that correcting, and all of that money spent trying to make it safe, Solo still underperformed. Playing it safe didn't even guarantee the outcome it was supposed to generate. And that's the whole gap in one story. 1977, one guy, no armies, no structure, guys just left alone to have fun. Modern day, armies of people, a structured process, and guys with the actual creative spark get shot down mid-shoot. Now here's the part that really shows how far this corporate risk aversion actually ripples. It's not contained to just one movie that went wrong. There was originally a plan for a standalone Obi-Wan Kenobi film, a real theatrical follow-up to Revenge of the Sith. That plan got scrapped, shelved, reportedly pretty much immediately after Solo underperformed at the box office. Not because anybody thought Obi-Wan was a bad idea, but because Lucasfilm looked at Solo's numbers and got spooked about theatrical Star Wars spin-offs as a format, period. So instead of a movie, you get a safer bet, a limited series for Disney+, a platform Disney already controls where the financial exposure, if it underperforms, is dramatically smaller than a theatrical release. Deborah Chow comes on to direct, and even the writing itself goes through changes during development, with the show's head writer position shifting hands before they even landed on the final version that you actually watched. And I want to be clear, Obi-Wan Kenobi turned out fairly well. People generally liked it. And that's not the point that I'm making, though. The point is, the very fact that it exists as a TV show instead of a movie, with a traceable reaction to another project's box office numbers, it wasn't creative evolution. It wasn't a deliberate choice to change the format to make the story better. This is a company getting spooked and retreating to the format with the smaller financial downside. The decision about what kind of story to tell got made by a spreadsheet, not a writer's room. But here's the proof that this isn't a talent problem. Andor exists. And genuinely, it's one of the best pieces of Star Wars content that's ever come out of Disney's ownership, full stop. But why did it work? There's no Skywalker name attached. There's no merchandise line riding on it. Nobody was expecting Andor to sell a single action figure. And because the built-in expectations were lower, it got to be slower, colder, and more politically sharp than basically anything else with a Star Wars logo on it. It got to trust its audience to sit with the silence, to follow an espionage thriller structure instead of a chosen one's hero journey. Now that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because somebody higher up decided this one didn't need to be safe, because it wasn't carrying the same weight as the rest of the franchise. Mandalorian Season 1 is the same story from a different angle. That show's entire job was to prove people will pay for Disney+. It wasn't protecting anybody's legacy, it was launching a platform. It was completely different pressure, completely different results. Plus, nobody can lie, everything that Jon Favreau touches turns to gold.
Santa's coming to town! Santa! Oh my God! Santa here? I know him.
Now, if Solo's director swap mid-movie was a nightmare, the sequel trilogy looked at that and said, "Oh, that's cute. Watch this." And then did a director swap mid-story across 3 separate films, with nobody apparently agreeing on where the whole thing was even going to go. Colin Trevorrow was originally attached to Episode 9, removed over creative differences, and J.J. Abrams, who had already directed Episode 7, comes back to finish out a story that Rian Johnson had actually taken in a completely different direction with Episode 8. That's not one vision carried across multiple movies. That's 3 different creative teams building on top of each other's homework in real time, and it shows up on screen consistently. The cleanest symptom, and I think about this one a lot, Rey's whole identity. Episode 8, The Last Jedi, tells you directly, she's nobody, no bloodline, no chosen one lineage. And that's presented as an actual thesis of her arc. The whole point being that greatness doesn't require a famous last name. And then immediately after, Episode 9 opens, text crawl, and I need you to read this sentence slowly because I promise it's not being exaggerated. You all know it.
And it confirms the worst. Somehow Palpatine returned.
And that's it. That's the explanation. That's the entire justification for retconning the previous movie's whole thesis, delivered with the same energy as somebody explaining why they're late to work. And then, in that same movie, Rey gets revealed as his granddaughter the whole time. It's not even a plot twist as much as a complete creative retreat. The previous movie's entire thesis getting walked back because a safer, more legacy-friendly answer tested better than she's nobody. And that's the point. And as if it gets any worse, then they have to add the whole, well, I'm a Skywalker part on top of it at the end. So after all that, once this retcon's rolling, the rest of the movie just kind of gives up trying. Stormtroopers fly now, full jetpacks, straight up into the air, and the actual characters on screen react like this is a shocking new development. And the thing is, Disney's own current culture canonly already has this. Jetpack troopers were in Battlefront back in 2015, Battlefront 2 in 2017. Both official EA games made under Lucasfilm's own current canon umbrella, years before the movie. And the writers apparently forgot their own franchise's homework, thinking this was a huge revelation plot twist. And on top of all of that, then Rey just suddenly throws out Force Lightning, a heavy-duty dark side technique that takes real training to pull off. And she's never so much as attempted something like that before in the entire trilogy, conveniently available just the exact moment that the script needed her to have it. No training, no explanation, just arbitrary creative decisions decision making. And then there's the dagger. Not a metaphorical dagger, the actual dagger, the magic dagger that just happens to line up perfectly with the old Death Star's wreckage. Allow them to have a dramatic plot point for C-3PO's character, turning the entire final film into an Indiana Jones treasure hunt because the story needed forward momentum, and nobody had actually planned where any of this was going 3 movies earlier. None of that is a talent gap. Abrams and Johnson are both genuinely skilled filmmakers in their own. It's what happens when a story this expensive, this brand critical, can't afford to actually commit to a bold direction and stick with it. So instead of one vision, you get a committee-managed patch job, protecting the investment instead of serving the story. And I want to be abundantly clear about something, because it'd be easy to walk away from this thinking I'm just saying that Disney executives are dumb, or they don't care, or they're bad at their jobs. And honestly, it's almost the opposite problem. When you have hundreds of people's salaries, a toy division's quarterly earnings, a shareholder call all sitting downstream of one movie's opening weekend, the rational move, and the actual smart, defensible move for basically everybody in that room is to minimize the risk at every single stage. Committees don't kill creativity because the people on them lack taste. They kill it because protecting that many livelihoods requires predictability. And the predictability and bold creative swings are very opposite and directly at odds with each other. And frankly, it's hard to predict how stable everyone's jobs will be afterwards. George Lucas could have failed in 1977, and it would have cost a studio some money when they weren't expecting to make it in the first place. If a modern Star Wars movie flops, it's layoffs. It's stock dips. It's a toy aisle nobody wants to restock again next quarter. And that's a completely different risk calculation sitting behind every single decision. And it shows up on screen every single time. When something goes sideways, it's not just Disney. It's Walmart, it's Target, it's every single store, every single brand that is involved in selling that merchandise. And the people making those decisions just try to protect everyone at the end of the day. And honestly, this connects right back to something I keep coming back to. A fan film funded off of ad revenue and replica lightsabers can take risks Disney structurally never can. Not because the people making Disney Star Wars are less talented than a guy editing on his laptop with his buddies in their spare time. Because literally nobody's livelihood is riding on whether or not that fan film lands. That fan film is low stakes, real risk, and sometimes real magic. Star Wars didn't get worse because someone stopped caring. It just got safer because it got expensive. And nobody's ever protected an investment their way into something worth remembering fondly.
Obviously, I've been talking about retiring for several years now. I wanted to get into sort of another stage of life where I'm not in the film business anymore. I don't have to run a corporation. And it occurred to me one day that the perfect person to take over the company was Kathy. It's just such a perfect fit. And I felt that I really wanted to put the company somewhere in a larger entity which would protect it. Disney is a huge corporation. They have all kinds of capabilities and facilities, so that there's a lot of strength that is gained by this. The great thing about Disney, again, as we were saying before, is that, you know, it's between the parks and all the things they've got going. It's great that we have a chance probably to expand that, and you know, there's lots and lots of opportunities at Disney that we wouldn't have at any other studio.